So, what the heck is an IRA and can you contribute to one? A lot of people have questions about common financial products that we have available in the market. And sometimes they hear words and they don't understand what they mean. And one of my goals is to make financial topics easy to understand, particularly when it comes to taxes, because taxes are probably one of the largest expenses that you're ever going to have in your lifetime. And most people don't talk about it enough. Hi, I'm Kelly, and I talk about tax topics and try to make them simple and easy to understand for you so that you can be empowered to pay less to our government and keep more of your hard earned money. So, what the heck is an IRA? Well, an IRA is an individual retirement account. Almost everyone can participate in having an IRA. Why is that? Well, if you have any level of earned income, so you're working some type of job and you're earning money, generally speaking, you're going to be able to contribute to an IRA. Now, when we talk about IRAs, there's two main types of IRAs. We have a traditional IRA, which is where we put the money in and we take a deduction, usually now, for putting the money in. So that means that we don't pay tax today, but when we take the money out in the future, generally when we retire, then we pay tax then. The other type of IRA is a Roth IRA. And a Roth IRA is going in with money that we paid tax on today, but then the money in the Roth IRA grows. And when we take the money out in retirement, we don't pay tax on it then. They're basically both the same thing, but again, they're two different vehicles. And how we choose the IRA depends on what our personal goals are. So let's start with how much money can we put into an IRA. So inside of 2025, the annual limitation for an IRA is $7,000. That means that each individual could contribute $7,000 into an IRA. If you're over age 50, you can actually get a step up on that contribution and you can put $8,000 in. Now, which one do you choose, a traditional or a Roth? Well, this is where it depends on your personal goals for retirement. So IRAs are really great savings vehicles. And generally speaking, I think that if you are on the younger end of this spectrum and you're wanting to put money away for retirement, the Roth should be something that you really strongly consider because you're generally possibly in a lower income tax bracket now than you would be in retirement. And you have a much longer time to earn money, and you really don't know how much money is going to be in there when you get to retirement. And if it's so significant, which, spoiler alert, most people who have been saving for retirement have way more in retirement than they are able to use. If they've been doing it diligently. And so they're surprised at how much money is in that Roth IRA or traditional IRA. And so if you have the option for a Roth, I highly consider or recommend that you consider using that vehicle to get into saving for retirement, because chances are you're probably going to end up with a higher income tax bracket in retirement than you have today. We also don't know the future, but I digress. So if you want to put money into a traditional IRA, you're going to get a deduction for that now, and you're going to reduce your taxes by putting money into the traditional IRA. And then you're going to save the money. And when you get to retirement, you're going to be able to take it out and you'll pay tax on it then. So it's no tax now, tax in the future. And again, the Roth is the flip side. Tax now, no tax in the future. Same kind of vehicle, just depends on what you want to do. You're going to put the money into an IRA. You can open these up at most brokerage firms or your bank and various other places. And then once the money is inside the IRA, then you're going to invest it into certain stocks or bonds or mutual funds or ETFs or all the different things that are out there. And I'm not an investment advisor, so I'm not telling you how to invest your money, but you don't want to just leave it sitting in cash. You want to make it invested into some type of fund so that it grows over time, because that's the point. So we're going to put money into an IRA and then we're going to leave it there and let it sit and grow so that we can get to retirement. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, for a lot of people, this is the way that they're going to be able to save money for retirement now. And there are plenty of statistics and studies showing that if you are a good saver early on in your career and you put money into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, you're generally speaking, and you do this consistently for a period of time, and that time is not as long as you think. Sometimes as low as 10 to 15 years and you max it out, you'll actually end up retiring a millionaire, depending on how young you start this. So don't sit on this opportunity to contribute to an IRA. They're a really great vehicle for a lot of people. Now, if you want to get into the traditional, you're going to get that deduction. You're going to take that deduction now on your taxes for putting the money in. If you are doing the Roth option, you're still going to want to keep track of it, but you don't get any kind of deduction on your tax return in the here and now for putting the money into the Roth IRA. Now, there is a really big caveat to this, and that is that if you earn over certain income limits, you're going to have to be cautious because you may not be able to participate in the same way into both of these IRAs. So when you hit certain income limits, you might have to do something that's called a backdoor Roth IRA if you want to get into that vehicle. And what that looks like is a little bit of both. So if you're over certain income limits, you're unable to contribute traditionally into a Roth IRA. The income rules cap you at your contributions going in the front door. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to get there in a different way. So what we do is we make a traditional IRA contribution and we classify it as non-deductible, meaning we do not take a deduction for that IRA on our current year tax return, but we still make the traditional IRA contribution. So that kind of makes us a little bit confused, but that's the way we do it. So we have to know how to report that on our tax return. And to do that, generally speaking, we're going to use Form 8606 in order to do this contribution and flip appropriately. We make a contribution to a traditional IRA. We mark it as non-deductible, meaning we do not take a deduction for it on our tax return in the year we made the contribution, even though it was traditional. Then, once it's in the traditional, we convert it to a Roth IRA. So we get into the Roth by using a backdoor method. Again, all of this, though, has reporting that needs to be put together on the tax return because you're going to get a lot of tax forms when you do this because all of this is very regulated. And then you're going to have to report it correctly so that you don't end up paying tax on this Roth IRA. Now, here's the thing. If you want to do a backdoor Roth strategy, you have to be very cautious that you do not have other money in other types of IRAs that would be considered part of what we call aggregation. And that's just a really big fancy word, meaning if I have other IRA money, and we're talking things like simple IRAs, this is the biggest one that gets people hung up. If I have money in other traditional or simple IRAs, and I then do this backdoor method, the new money goes into the old money and it gets kind of put all in the same pot and it mixes all up, and then you don't get the clean move into the Roth. So you want to consult a good financial advisor if this is you. So you can't just go about doing this because you run into these problems. And this is the problem with our tax code is it's super complex and nobody's supposed to understand how it is they're supposed to jump through all these hoops to do it. So if this is you and you're like, wait, I already have some money because I had a job here and I have one here from an old place, and then I want to do this new strategy because this sounds cool, get a consult before you go jumping through all these hoops, because you're going to probably run into a problem where you end up with a taxation on something that you never intended, and you may not have actually touched the money and you're going to pay tax on this money. So not always a good move if you have to do that. But the key point here is that most people can really participate in the IRA structure, and it's a really great vehicle for you to save for retirement. So understand that whatever your goals are, I recommend that you really take advantage of the IRA option and then save that money, put it in there, let it be invested, and forget about it. Because the big caveat is that if you want to touch this money before you're 59 and a half years old, you're going to pay a pretty steep penalty. You're going to pay a 10% penalty on the distribution, and you're going to have to pay income tax on the amount you took out. So it's kind of two taxes. So don't think it's just 10% because some people think that's what it is. That 10% is just the penalty, right? And that is really expensive money. And so I really caution if you get into a traditional IRA and you're not wanting to leave that money in for the long term and you might want to touch it, be very cautious before you go putting the money in, because once it's in, it's locked up and you really want to leave it there until you get to retirement. You don't want to be touching this money ahead of time. I hope that helps understand what traditional and Roth IRAs are. I think I'll do a deep dive further in how the mechanics of the backdoor really work. But again, I want to kind of give you guidance on what these things are so that you're not afraid of doing some of these things that seem complex and seem out of reach, and they're really not. Everybody can participate.